What is going on, everybody? Another beautiful day here in northern Colorado. Today I just really want to go through and discuss the differences between living on the east side of I-25 and living on the west side of I-25 when it comes to living in northern Colorado. So the biggest difference is obviously the towns. So on the west side, we're going to focus more on the Fort Collins, we're going to focus on Loveland, we're going to focus on some Berthoud, and then Longmont kind of gets thrown in there a little bit on that side. And then on the east side, we have Timnath, Colorado, Windsor, Colorado, and Johnstown, Colorado. Anything else farther east, I have a pretty good idea on it. My family does live out in Platteville, Colorado, so I have somewhat of an idea of what's going on out in that area, but I do know a lot about the Windsor, Johnstown, and Timnath spot. So let's jump into it today and discuss really the big major differences between living in East Colorado and living on the west side of Colorado, close to the foothills. So one of my biggest things that I've always told people when they come here, because 90% of us, when you look at northern Colorado, Fort Collins is going to be the biggest one. Fort Collins obviously has the Colorado State University. It's got one of the cooler downtowns and has been on the top cities to live in for quite a few years now. But a lot of these other cities get kind of neglected due to that, and everybody thinks that they want to be in Fort Collins. And Fort Collins is always a great option, but you are going to be paying that premium for it, just like in this video. That's kind of going to be my first deal about living in northern Colorado. If you're coming here and you're trying to live on a budget, Fort Collins sometimes isn't the best option for you. The budget option would be going out a little bit east, living on the east side of I-25. Like right now, as we're driving back towards Loveland, Colorado, we're just going to pass under I-25 here. That's the northbound lane heading to I-25, and the southbound lane is we're just going to cross over here. But we're heading back into Loveland now. We went and picked up an oil filter from Tri-City Cycles for my Yamaha Tenere 700. Unfortunately, it sprung a pretty good sized leak on the oil filter, and so I got to get that replaced, and thought it'd be a good time to kind of discuss about the big differences. So when you come out here, Loveland, Berthoud, Fort Collins are going to be all relatively pretty close in terms of price point. You might have about a 1 to 2% difference in price points between, like I say, Loveland and Fort Collins, depending on who you're with and depending on what kind of deal your realtor is going to get for you on that side. But that would be about the average of what you're going to get difference-wise. But the pros of living on the west side is super easy access to the mountains, commute time to get to a King Soopers or some shopping centers like going to downtown Fort Collins or downtown Loveland is going to be about a 7 to 8 minute drive difference on that side. And you're going to have different views of the mountains. Like, we're just barely past I-25 on the west side, and this is just a drop dead gorgeous view out here. I mean, this is some of the best stuff you can possibly get here in northern Colorado, and it is just something that you can't escape from. Now, I'm not saying the east side doesn't have amazing views either, but they're just not as close. And there's this weird balance, because I-25 splits it up so badly to where we have this big commercial district, which is I'm riding through right now, which has some of the best views I think Colorado has to offer. Everything a little bit closer than this is too close to where a lot of the houses get in the way, and you don't get any views because of the houses. And if you go further out towards Windsor, downtown Timnath, the views start disappearing because you're a little bit too far away. But you get a more expansive view of the Rocky Mountains, so you get to see a little bit more just because of obviously the distance. So that's kind of the difference you're going to get on that side, just view-wise, and that's kind of another big deal that a lot of people look at is when they go to Fort Collins, they go around, they can say, wow, look how close we are to the foothills, but you really don't get any views, so you got to make that determination. If you want to live on the close west side of town, be prepared that your views aren't going to be nearly as spectacular. When you drive around and stuff, you're going to get them and stuff. Like right now, I live very close to the foothills. I lost my view years ago because of other houses, and so now I'm over here where I get to come out here and drive around in these commercial districts and go do my shopping. But no matter what, whatever city you're in, you're going to get good mountain views as you're driving into work, as you're going up to go hiking. So to me, views are kind of equal no matter what on that side, because the majority of homes, even in Fort Collins, Loveland, Berthoud, 99% of them aren't even going to have a view at all from the actual house. You'd be super lucky, and you typically pay about $100,000 premium on a home that has mountain views that won't get obstructed. So my other big thing that I would say too, you know, commuting wise, being on the west side here can be a little bit more of a struggle to me, in my opinion. It takes forever to get to certain places. It's starting to feel more congested because everybody is starting to hyper focus around the mountains and being within 5-minute drive of the foothills. And so if you just push yourself a little bit further east, a little bit further out, away from all the traffic, go a little farther east, out to Windsor, out to Timnath, and especially when you get out to Johnstown, Colorado, you're really going to get a much more simple drive when it comes to getting to DIA, getting to I-25. The mountains, obviously, you're going to add about a 20-minute extra drive in to get to the mountains, potentially even 30, depending how far you go out, if you're going to start heading out towards Eaton and some of those further out towns that are out east. But no matter what, you know, the drive out east is going to be a little bit more difficult. It's going to be a little bit more, or not difficult, sorry, I was going to say, being on the west side of I-25, it's just going to be a little bit more difficult. It's going to be a little bit more challenging, and you're just going to deal with more people, and that's just kind of one of the negatives you're going to feel from living on the west side versus the east side. So my third deal that I would say, what really separates the east side from the west side, is also the open landscape. I was, when I first came out here, I originally lived in Baser, Kansas, near Leavenworth. It was about 30 minutes from Kansas City. But the best thing about living in Kansas was the open, expansive views you get. When you get down into Loveland, when you get down into Fort Collins, when you go to Berthoud, those towns kind of can get a little bit crowded. Berthoud, not nearly as much. Berthoud, you still get some pretty cool, expansive views, just like we're getting here. But we're still very close to I-25. And as you see, as we keep driving in right now, we're on Highway 392, which splits between Fort Collins, Loveland, and Windsor if we headed east going that direction. But we're going to head over towards the middle of Fort Collins, Loveland, and as we get closer and closer to 287, Highway 287, which is the old highway that runs all the way to Wyoming, all the way down to Denver on that side, and you're going to lose a lot of your view there. There's going to be a lot of hills in the way. It's going to be a lot more houses, a little more dense, and so that's a little bit more of a con. You don't just get these big open expansive views where you can go out, go to a little hiking area a few minutes from your house and be able to just walk around and just feel like you're kind of out there by yourself. So that would be my third one on that side. My fourth deal, I would say that I would definitely push for on Fort Collins versus Loveland. Here, let me just adjust my helmet really quick because it's getting hard to breathe just sitting at this light. But my fourth one, you know, the west side, you're going to have the activity. You're going to have the mountains. You're going to be able to go out and really enjoy yourself when it comes to just leaving your back door, spending about a 10 to 15 minute drive to get up to a hiking trail. Fort Collins, you have some really cool ones within 20 minutes of Fort Collins. And it's just something that's what most of us, when we move out to northern Colorado, is like, well, I want to be closer to the mountains, but it comes at a pretty significant cost. So for my first point, which I never ended up finishing on that side, I got a little distracted, is, you know, Loveland, 1 to 2%, that's what you're going to get about a discount, maybe about a $10,000 to $20,000 discount between Loveland and Fort Collins. Now, the quality of home does change a little bit in Loveland and Fort Collins, and you do get a little bit better quality in Loveland, I would say, for the price than you do in Fort Collins. But overall square footage, overall yard size are going to be roughly about the same. But once you get over to, say, Windsor, for example, I would say you start getting up into that 3 to 5% discount rate between a Fort Collins home and a Windsor home on that side, which is a really good discount to have. A lot of times you can try and find some houses that do have some good views, which you can then take that 3 to 5% and put it into that premium to get a better view, or a little bit bigger of a yard, or even be able to get a little bit bigger of a house or better quality materials. Now, in terms of like comparison between Loveland and Windsor, I would have to say they're pretty equal. You know, Windsor, because it is newer homes, because they are nicer homes, you tend to have a little bit cooler neighborhoods as well. That's going to give the value to Windsor to where Loveland doesn't have as much of that. We have a lot of older neighborhoods. If you're not an HOA person, Loveland has a lot of neighborhoods with no HOA. Fort Collins does as well. Once you start moving out east, you start getting into newer neighborhoods that have pools, that have activity centers. You know, it's just more involved around, I would say, family to a certain regard, and maybe a little bit more towards the retirement community as well. As the younger generation starts moving closer to the foothills, and the older generation is totally fine with driving. They've been used to driving most of their life, and, you know, all these millennials and guys like me and stuff, you know, a 15-minute drive is just so brutal anymore, you know. Thank gosh I got a bike to where it makes it kind of enjoyable on that side. But it's something that we young guys talk about, is just, you know, how much of a pain it is to drive. And don't even get me started about going down to Denver and DIA on that side. So I would say my fifth thing about, you know, the differences between eastern northern Colorado and western northern Colorado is just, how would you put it? It's just a different mindset, you know. The people who are a little bit closer to town, you know, even talking about Fort Collins, they're all about, you know, kind of keeping their town small, keeping things, you know, homegrown, keeping the community small and tiny, but keeping them involved. It's an awesome thing to have, but it also pushes a lot of people outside of it. And so really the top of the top, you know, it seems like anymore, to be able to live out here, you got to be a top producer. You have to, you know, have a certain, you know, personality to be able to get along with people that are on the west side, where once you get to the east side, it is a nice mix of people. Everyone is friendly out here. Please don't get me wrong on thinking that I wouldn't say that this is not a friendly place and that you can pretty much strike up a great conversation with everybody. But it does seem to me, at least, when you get over to the east side, you just get a little bit more of that homegrown feel. You get that Kansas boy feel a little bit. You just, those individuals that have just been blue collar hard workers most of their life, especially as you head over to the Greeley area on the east side. And it's a nice feel to have on that, if that's what you want to be surrounded by and you want to spend your time with. And over on the west side, everybody's a hiker to a certain regard, but once you get over to the west side of I-25, oh, you start getting a little bit maybe more like of the granola side of stuff. You get a little bit more of the people that are, you know, I want to go out hiking, I want to go out and do these things, you know, I want to go have a craft beer, where maybe someone over in Greeley is just looking for a Corona, or they're looking for Budweiser on that side. And so it's just, when you go out to a bar, it's just, you go out to Windsor, that's just a little different feel. Now, Loveland, Berthoud, Windsor are all roughly about the same in my mind. Johnstown is its own little beast on its own. It's got its own type of community. It's actually growing pretty significantly right now. They're getting a Buc-ee's out there, which, if no one's ever heard of a Buc-ee's, it's one of the coolest convenience stores you could possibly get. And they're typically out east, typically in like a Kansas or a Nebraska, and you know, started out in those areas a little bit on that side. I don't know the exact origin, so someone down in the description, you know, or in the comments, please feel free to tell me where Buc-ee's originated from exactly. But it is just, Johnstown is getting so much bigger. They're getting a couple more grocery stores. You know, it's starting to grow out. The neighborhoods are getting kind of fun. A lot of kids, a lot of families. Whew, that guy got a little close to that yellow line. And it's just a cool spot. And so those are really my biggest things on that side. I mean, I wish I was a little bit better, and probably when I get inside, this is really my last motorcycle ride, which these are more me just rambling about just different ideas I've had about Fort Collins, Loveland, Windsor, Timnath, and that area. And they're not as dialed in, but once I get back inside, which is this winter, and get in front of the camera, I'll give you guys a lot more details on these places. But I'm just giving you guys the general overview and feel of what I have, the feelings of each town on that side. And you know, it's not what's going to make the difference on it. And, you know, I want to get you guys some statistics as well. But you know, when I'm over here riding in traffic at 6 o'clock on a Friday, it's a little distracting. So these videos are a little more relaxed and loose on that side. But let's talk about Timnath, and I'll talk a little bit more about Johnstown because I've been talking about Windsor, Fort Collins, and Loveland a lot. So Timnath is just a suburb of Fort Collins. Don't ever let anybody tell you differently. Don't let your realtor, sucker you into thinking that it's going to grow like crazy. That town has been stuck and been kind of slow for a very long time. Since I've been here, it's been growing a little by little, but it has not compared to Fort Collins, to Loveland, to Windsor. Everything has grown more than it has in terms of having restaurants and having places to go shopping and stores. Timnath is just a bunch of really nice homes on the east side of I-25 in Fort Collins. And they have a couple little places. They've got a little spot going on, but they're just high-end houses. And it's just a nice place to go. If you're going to spend a bunch of money living in Fort Collins, Timnath, you're still going to get a heck of a lot more than you are in Fort Collins for the price. And they're going to be newer homes, newer neighborhoods. You're going to have some really cool water parks out there that come along with the neighborhoods, and small pools and little parks that also are in those spots. And they are Metro District homes. If you ever have questions on those, feel free to write me down in the description. I can send you to a good video on Metro Districts. They're not that exciting, but they are important to purchasing a home out here in Colorado if you've never heard of one. But now we're back on 287, guys, heading back up towards Loveland. We're going to be passing the big old Walmart off here in about a few minutes. We got a little Freddy's over there. But here we are at 287, just another, like I was saying, out there, beautiful views, great views of the mountains. Once you get to 287, you got a lot of neighborhoods like we have over here on the left. That one is Manor Ridge Estates, and you're just tucked into kind of a valley. And then you got little hills that'll pop you over and give you some decent views on that side still. But then almost everything is covered up by a commercial building or a neighborhood. But anyways, so Timnath is just a big suburb. It's a cool place to go at least visit. Like if you're going to go check out Fort Collins or check out Windsor, Timnath is 100% worth looking at. But for most of my clients I've talked to, I haven't been able to sell them yet on the Timnath idea because there's just not much out there. That is the true commuter's paradise. You're going to be out living in a really nice home in a really nice neighborhood, but everything you're going to have to do, especially for shopping, is going to have to commute down on Harmony Road, which is one of the worst roads in Fort Collins to drive on. And that's going to be your life out there. Windsor, at least you have a couple other options to get around. You have a small little grocery store. You're very close to Loveland, so you can go into Loveland if you wanted to for bigger groceries on that side. Timnath obviously has a Costco that's about less than 10 minutes away from most of those neighborhoods. So that's a big deal on that side. They also have a Chick-fil-A out there, which is huge for out here in Colorado. If you've never sat in a Colorado Chick-fil-A line, just get ready for it. It's probably like going to California for an In-N-Out burger or going up to Colorado Springs for an In-N-Out burger. It just gets overly ridiculous on that side. So to me, Timnath is just not my cup of tea. I will definitely say it is for some people on that side. I'm always happy to go out there and show it and share it. They have some of the best schools, and they have some really good upcoming schools that are using the top technology. They're going through and learning the newest form of math and writing. I don't even know anymore. I just know when my dad was trying to help me through school, he was confused as all get out because the math had changed, reading had changed, grammar had changed. And so, if that's something you want, the old school stuff, there's some old school schools still around on that side. But if you're wanting that high tech, new and everything on that end, you definitely just want to go over to those Timnath, Windsor areas where the schools are just a little bit newer on that end. So that's really all I got on that side. I got about 1,000 other things I can do, but I hate when I make these videos longer than 15 minutes. I can almost guarantee you I've made this one longer than 15 minutes. So if you've made it to the end of this, thank you. This one was more of a rant than anything else. Anything else about Johnstown? Johnstown has a big old YMCA there, which is a really cool deal. And they got some fun neighborhoods up there as well. So Johnstown is probably the cheapest place to look for homes right now, especially with how the market has been. Interest rates have gone up. Client that's got good credit score right now and doing really good, got great jobs. Right now they're at a 7.5 interest rate with a 2-1 buy down, just to give you that heads up. So interest rates have crept up. Right now is still a really good time to get your finger into the market of Fort Collins and Loveland, especially this winter. So if your plan is to think about like waiting for next year or trying to wait it out, and you know, if you got plans that you got to wait for, then yeah, you got to wait. But if it's, you're thinking the market's going to change or the interest rates are going to go down, I would suggest that that's not the case. Price wise, sellers are becoming more negotiable, so you can go in and start negotiating on prices more to try and squeeze out the little bit that you can from them. Sellers are getting more used to doing 2-1 buy downs with the interest rates that are going on, and obviously cash is definitely becoming more and more king here as the interest rates and the mortgage market has changed. So if you guys like these videos, please always feel, if you guys have comments, please go down and leave a comment for me. Otherwise, if you guys could help me out, the biggest thing that you guys could do is always like and subscribe to my channel and continue to watch these videos. Even if you don't even listen to the actual, you know, information, put me on in the background while you're doing something else. That's always great to help me out on that side. And as always, we will see you guys next week.